Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Passion Within. We've got a special guest with us for a second time, Mr. Julian Scanlon from the Ecological Project. Um, he reached out and said, I've got more to talk about, Ken. So I said, well, brother, come on back. You know, the more knowledge that we can share with our audience, the better. And so, Julian, welcome back. Anybody that hasn't seen the first episode, we got more into why Julian does what he does and his passions. Today, I think we're going to get a little bit more in depth on some of the things that Julian does to help the people understand things like Korean natural farming, ecology, seeds, Korean natural farming, things like that, and just in all fairness to everyone. And to be perfectly honest, Julian actually helped with these questions. So, Julian, thank you very much, brother. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. So, where would you like to start, Julian, on your questions, or catch us up? You were on about 2.5 weeks ago, so maybe catch us up on what's been happening for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so again, thanks for having me on. Super cool of you to provide a platform like this for people to share their thoughts and regenerative ideas or their passion. So much cool things can happen in a space like this. So thank you for doing that. Yeah, things have been great the past 2 weeks. There was the Our Future conference with Matt Powers. A lot of cool speakers were on, and after so much information, I've barely absorbed all of it, but I need to go back and see a lot of the videos. William Padilla Brown has this truffle evolution theory, for example, where he compares mammalian evolution to be, intrinsic to these truffles and how we've evolved next to each other, and very likely truffles are suggesting about like neurogenesis within us as well. And so all these rabbit holes are open for me as always, and I'm gonna just have to dig in a little deeper. It's there are 1,000 places you can go,
Oh,
and it's nothing like. I love sitting down. A lot of times I'll get sucked into my social media, and the moment I'm scrolling, I'm like, no, gotta back this up. I'll go to some research paper. I'll go to some, even within social media, some cool link that provides me with some knowledge that'll either better me or better the people around me. So yeah, it was a super cool conference. I highly suggest people check out Matt Powers, check out a lot of things that he teaches. Just a very effective communicator. He has a teaching background. He's written a lot of books. Either way, I've learned a lot of what I know from him. So I
yeah.
can't but introduce him as well, because he does seed saving, he does composting, he does soil work. It's all over the place. And if you have any questions, that's a good place to go.
Well, like I have the banner running across the bottom of the screen, one lit candle can light many without ever diminishing its own light. And Matt is definitely one of those lit candles, as you are, my friend, sharing knowledge all the time. And as you said, like, guys, if you need or want to get in a more in-depth understanding, Matt is one of the men that just gives and gives and gives, and he does research. He's writing the book that the scientists are now looking at going, oh, we didn't understand that. Well, Matt, how does this work? And
Yep.
like, you can't beat that, man. Like, he's such a heartwarming person to deal with as well. I had him on our original It's All About the Biology tour, and he did a phenomenal job in helping people. But Julian, let's just jump right in. One of the things that we've talked about, and I talked about with your friend Dave. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name because I'm always going to mess it up.
David
On
Augustinian.
mushrooms.
I'll say it. I'm used to it, but
Yeah, yes. Thank you, brother. That's a much help. Much help. Um, is the fear of mushrooms. And I never even, because I don't have a fear of mushrooms, and like I don't go out in nature picking them myself. And if I did, I would, get a book that's going to tell me what is, a healthy mushroom, a poisonous mushroom, a magic mushroom. Because a lot of people worry about that. Can you touch on that in a more in-depth manner for our audience, please?
absolutely, yeah. So first of all, mycophobia, the irrational fear of mushrooms. It's something that's more widely spread than you would know, especially in the United States. Maybe we'll say even the western part of the globe, even though there are a lot of cultures on the other parts of the world that are very used to mushrooms, interact with them culturally, and they don't have this fear. And I think it's good to point out how it may be just kind of embedded in us in the United States simply because of, maybe cartoons that don't give a lot of context, that like to glamorize, the poisonous mushroom that, you know, kills the king and all these different potential fears. That's something that we can slowly take apart just by educating people as to not only how to forage for mushrooms, with, your proper identification books and, proper help, but also, just to experiment with eating more of these mushrooms. There's so many. And part of the phobia, I think, very likely almost comes from the inaccessibility of good mushrooms in the beginning. So a lot of the mushrooms that we're, used to eating, or maybe the more common ones are, these button mushrooms, these portobello mushrooms, and, granted, pretty tasty stuff, but they're not always really good if they come out of a can or if they're served raw on a salad. And so educating people as like how to treat mushrooms too, not all mushrooms, need to be cooked to be eaten, but you can be pretty safe and say you should probably cook every mushroom before you eat it.
Right.
That's because it's made out of chitin. That chitin needs to be taken down because we can't digest it. And so, maybe just someone after putting a ton of raw mushrooms on a salad started getting a bad maybe reaction and started blaming the mushroom, where you just need to understand that there are different ways to treat it. And I love foraging for mushrooms. I've been very lucky. My grandmother brought me out with the whole family very, very early on. And I'm pretty sure ever since I was able to walk. And we were with a group of
before.
Probably, absolutely. Probably before. And with a group of people, and we really just hunted one mushroom because at the time that's all we knew what to hunt, and it's the one we were able to identify best. And so that went on for a very long time. In fact, 10, 12 years, that's about the amount of time it took me to start looking into other mushrooms. It was a long time of just zeroing in on the porcino, right? The Boletus barosii or rubriceps, depending on which one you find here in New Mexico. And so that was a good way to start, though. I got comfortable with it. I knew how to go back to that one mushroom, and the exposure got me used to really identifying it. So creating more events where people can actually go out into the woods and experience them. I think this is a super important thing to do locally. If you're hearing this and, you notice, okay, there's no mushroom knowledge being taught in my area. Maybe it's time you either start learning so you can further that knowledge, or you start seeing who could be in the area that could facilitate such a thing, and creating these experiences and getting people out there in the woods, interacting with nature. And, I don't know, the consequences are endless from doing that. There's not, it's not just that's all you get or mushrooms. It's you get, being able to be grounded in nature and breathe fresh air, and perhaps maybe get a little more attached to nature so you don't disrespect it as much on other occasions. And so, yeah, this fear of mushrooms, I think, can be taken apart by showing people, educating people, and getting them involved.
And you're also, if you're sharing that knowledge and gaining that knowledge, you're building that community, which really is the essence of humanity. We all want to be part of a community. And this is a way that you can create community around you. And like David and I were talking here a few days ago, find a local association in your area that is dealing in mushrooms, and somebody that's got the experience to go with you and teach you. And that's basically what you're saying, Julian, is, learn yourself so that you can share that with others. And your grandmother started you out, and she was probably, you were still in mama's belly when you were going out hunting mushrooms. You just didn't know you were doing it. Now, there's such a wide variety of mushrooms. Can you tell me a little bit more about what to look for on the basic poison mushrooms? So, if you have a child and you're out in the wild, and your child's just running around, is there something we can teach as a basic idea of what to look for, where this mushroom's probably going to not be one you're going to want to eat?
Okay, so, well, first of all, just to, not answer your question, then answer it later, I'll say that
Okay.
every biome is different. I can't
Yeah.
give you like a silver bullet, like don't
Okay.
eat this for wherever you are. There are just some that have certain characteristics that usually allude to them being potentially toxic or
Yes.
poisonous.
Yeah.
Right. So often mushrooms that taste spicy are poisonous. Um,
Hmm.
but there aren't a lot of poisonous mushrooms out there compared to the whole bunch of the mushrooms. I don't want to shout out a percentage, but it's very small, and you just need to take it on a case-to-case basis. There's also, I think, some mushrooms I can talk about that are maybe generally recognized and will probably be found in the majority, or at least the places that are most inhabited, as the, the white killing angel amanita. That one's just generally, that's a no-no. We also want to talk about the red amanitas. There's some nuance there, but might as well stay away from
Yeah.
these, the classic mushrooms with the white dots. Even though there are cultures that treat them perfectly fine and have ways to cook them / pickle them, and it's actually a huge resource of protein for a lot of people. It's, you come into a forest and you realize, okay, there's maybe 50 pounds of this mushroom fruiting now. That's a lot of protein to just find growing out of the ground, as
Oh yeah.
everything from a hunter gatherer to more recently, right? So people
Mhm.
found ways to process these mushrooms that are commonly
Made
referred to as
them
poisonous.
safe.
You see that, right? You see that
Yeah.
red mushroom with the white dots, and you're like, okay, don't touch that. That's poisonous. In fact, that's what I was always told. But it tends to actually have some really good benefits in it. And so if you, for example, there's muscimine, that's an element within fly agaric, and it's known for some. I don't want to like say too many details because I still need to wrap my head around it, but it helps with the brain, and it helps with mental clarity and this kind of stuff. So don't ignore mushrooms off the bat. But to get back to your question about kind of generally poisonous mushrooms, I would just take it on a case per case basis. Generally you shouldn't be eating anything just right off the bat if you're in the forest. Even right,
Yeah.
even berries, right? I mean, how many berries have bad
Mhm.
effects, and yet they look so juicy sometimes. I'm in the forest and you're like, oh man, that looks like such a satisfying berry to have, but you don't do it. You just look it up, you see what it is, you take in all the different clues that could be around it, and something to note is that our human sensors are just so in tune with what we need. Yeah, we could look at a book and see a certain description, and that's very helpful, but sometimes smelling the mushroom is huge confirmation, or breaking it and seeing how it comes apart. Chanterelles, they're known to smell like
Mm.
apricots. Almost
Mm.
nothing else smells like apricots, and the majority of their poisonous counterparts are going to be a little spicy. And so there's nothing else that smells like apricots. That doesn't mean you should eat every mushroom that smells like apricots, but that sure gets you really close to confirming that that's the right mushroom. So again, we like hunting porcini in the beginning. There's not a lot of things that are poisonous that look like it. It's really easy to discern. Has this really big plump stem and plump cap, and has a certain color spores. It's easy to discern. So if there's a mushroom you want to start with and you know that's in your area, definitely look into the porcini.
Okay, so one of the things that I forgot to ask you and David this, is there an app for like, because pretty much everybody has the cell phone with them. Is there a mycology app that people can download to give them basically a step ahead? Like, definitely don't just pick a mushroom in the forest and eat it. Bring it home, make sure that you know exactly what it is before you consume it. But is there one like, because if you stumble across 50 pounds of mushrooms, all that protein, you're going, oh, growler all this up, you fill your bag, you go home and went, oh shit, man, this, I can't eat this, it's
Mm-hmm.
all going to go to garbage. Is there something like that available out there?
Yeah. So there's iNaturalist, which is always great. That's a great kind of like a citizen open source platform where a ton of people contribute pictures, and it does have a generally like decent identification AI going on there. But again, don't Don't trust the ID of an app,
Hmm.
especially because it can't smell the mushroom and it can't touch the
Yeah.
mushroom. But I found very often that things like Mushroom ID, that's another app, iNaturalist, they might get you close enough to at least put a name on it. You know, you're like,
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start with this. I mean, of course, if you're going through your, taxonomical knowledge and your books and you're going STEM and guilds and stuff, you'll pretty soon get to the answer on a book. But if you just
Right.
don't know anything, it might get you close enough to at least put a name on it. And then you look the name up and try to ID it from there and say, how do I ID this turkey tail mushroom? And I'll go through a list of things that you'll need to do to confirm that mushroom again. So
Yeah.
iNaturalist, mushroom ID. That's about the extent of what I use, and they're both free too as well. So it's not bad for like a free resource.
Well, and like you said, it's the people like you that are going out taking the pictures and identifying them for the people, and it's that open source where people are helping people, and that's again comes back to the caring, sharing, and community, which I think is absolutely amazing. And thank you for those resources for anybody that wants to go out and do this. Um, Now let's jump into Linda's question here. She's asking about spore prints.
Yes. So spore prints is a great way to identify mushrooms. That's very simply, spores can be a lot of different colors. So you take a white piece of paper and a black piece of paper, and you put what you think, where the spores are coming out of, likely pores, gills, and you put them on top
Mhm.
of the papers, put something over it so there isn't any wind disturbing it. And after some time, you should be able to remove it and see what color the spores are. Sometimes they're white, and so they won't show up on a white piece of paper. Sometimes they're black, so vice versa. And that is also a really good way to zoom in on your ID. Like, not the only factor, but yes, that's a good kind of like at home thing you can do.
Okay, so I because I don't go and do this, is it if they're coming black, they're bad, and they're coming white, they're good? Is that the
No,
general idea?
it's the color of the spore is just kind of like describing factor of the mushroom.
Okay.
You know, Ken has a hat on, and the mushroom
Mhm.
has a purple spore. It's like, and so maybe saying, okay, this mushroom really looked like this mushroom to me, but the spores aren't the color they're supposed to be, so I guess I'm going to scratch that option. It's a great way to determine things. There are all a whole like suite of things you can do. Honestly, even getting like hydrogen peroxide, and that reacts to certain mushrooms a certain way, and alphanol reacts to other mushrooms in another way. And depending on your type of mushroom, there could
Mhm.
be a ton of different ways to go about identifying it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, and that's good, and learning if you're going to get into, going and collecting, those are the kind of things that you really need to start to understand is how to identify the mushroom because you've got your spore print, you've got your color, you've got your smell. You're not going to be tasting it, um, but
You
if
know,
you're
side note on that, and not that I want to
please,
encourage people to pop any mushroom in their mouth, but as long as it doesn't pass through your liver, it's technically not poisonous. So you'll see like really experienced mycologists take a bite out of a mushroom even without knowing what it is, just to get a taste of it. And that's a kind of a way to finalize the ID. Now, again, don't go popping mushrooms in your mouth. This is very experienced mycologists doing this, but it is an interesting concept that you can actually still let your senses taste it without it necessarily hurting you.
okay,
It's
so
not
you're
something I'm going to
tasting.
indulge on, but I have just bitten and tasted and just touched my tongue up against certain mushrooms, and it turned out like, whoa, this tastes like cinnamon, like some of the matsutake we found. It's like, okay, so that confirms that. Like nothing else tastes like red hots and dirty socks and cinnamon, and so that was just like, okay, I now I know
Okay,
what this.
I gotta stop you there, brother. Okay, if you're tasting dirty socks, I think you were taking too many magic mushrooms.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
no, no. They were definitely that's definitely a component, and maybe not the best way to describe it in a restaurant, but there's a funky umami, is what you would say in a restaurant. I like telling people it's gym socks because it's just kind of commonly known within the mycological community. There's someone that says that red hots and gym socks, or red hots and socks, kind of compares it to that. I wish I could give them credit for the saying, but yeah, I mean that's one of those mushrooms out there that's like super rare, super delicious, and that we have here in the Rocky Mountains, where it's really known as like this Japanese mushroom that is also used ceremonially. We kind of just
Mhm.
have it all over here in the Rockies, and it's kind of a gem, and a lot of people know about it. Yeah.
So if you're saying that the Japanese, it's really good for them, then maybe that's something that a person could go out, collect, and sell to the Japanese community in your local area and make some
Yeah,
cash off of it.
absolutely. Yeah, in fact, it's known to like you know potentially be very, very expensive, depending even on the quality mushroom you get, because they're used ceremonially. And because if you think about it, right, Japan is so small and has such a high population, there aren't as many mushrooms left. And so people do ship them there. I'm not really about, I want to keep things in their bioregion. I'm not going to like, maybe turn down the chance to maybe sell one really expensive mushroom to some Japanese, whoever wants it. But I do want to be able to, yeah, give it to the community, maybe someone that has a deeper cultural connection to it, right? See what they want
Mhm.
to do with it and how they prepare it and how they cook it or how they, act around it. And I think you can learn so much from that, especially some of these cultures that have been interacting with mushrooms for a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot longer than our culture really has been, and that's again forming community. If you can find those people in your local area, that would value that, then um, you can learn a lot from other cultures that populate our planet, and there's no fear in that cultural interaction, and you make friends, and they're going to help you if you're helping them, and that's one of the beauties of community, and that's why you preach it, I preach it. Pretty much everybody that's going to come on to this show is going to be preaching caring, sharing, and community, because we're passionate about helping others. It's not just about us. That's one of the reasons that we do what we do. Um, Now let's get into a little bit more on. I'm going to have to look at the question because, hey, don't call me Four Eyes, okay?
No.
Um, let's go. Let's get away from the mushrooms a little bit. I know you're an expert, or well, you're trained and understand a lot better than I do. The use of the Korean natural farming inputs, and that's another caring, sharing community. You had mentioned labs, because I know a lot of people don't really understand um, the uses of labs and the variety of uses and things you can do with it. And there's a lot of misconceptions around Korean natural farming, and the amounts, etc. So if you could go a little bit more in depth on that side of things, that would, I know our community would really appreciate that from you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, not an expert. I love it. I am in it. I'm doing it a lot, but I learn new things every day, and so um, yeah, I'm a student of Korean natural farming for sure, and I love bringing it to the people. It's very much an interesting practice because there's not a lot of people advertising it, right? Not a lot of people
Hmm.
making money off of it because, again, yeah, it's teaching people how to fish. It's not making repeat customers, right? You're teaching literally people how to make their own thing and bye bye. That's it. It's a one time thing. And so bringing it for free to the people, I'm trying to introduce the community to it. And so I also need to zone in on certain of the preps, let's call them, so certain of the inputs that are really easy for people to understand and maybe start dabbling with. And I think labs is a really good one, which is lactic acid bacteria serum. It's this,
Hmm.
uh, you know, this great process of essentially what was making cheese,
Okay.
and the byproduct is this serum, which is really beneficial for all sorts of different things. And this is something that everyone can do. They just need water, rice, and milk, and they're set. There's a lot to this, I can go along and explain how to make it. It's very simple. There are videos that already do that, so I don't
Hmm.
necessarily want to get into that. But once you have your final product, this thing can be used for a lot of different things. It can remediate your soil. It can start taking down all toxins and excesses, because that's kind of like a baseline understanding of it, is that these little lactobacilli love turning nitrates into amino acids. And nitrates,
Mm.
very commonly, is what smells, what's putrid
Mm-hmm.
and what smells wrong. And the amino acid is this more available form of protein. And so once you do that, not only is it more available for the soil, but you're getting rid of smells. If you have a chicken coop, you can spray it around your chicken coop, and all of a sudden it doesn't spray anymore, doesn't smell anymore. You can do this with pig farms that they do in Korea. And
That's the big one.
yeah,
That pig smell is a big one for people.
and you say no smell pig farming. That sounds like a joke, but they're doing it. And because there is
Mhm.
just this really probiotic approach to pig farming where they're spraying the pens, they're spraying the food. So, right, these probiotics are getting on the food and they're going through the pig's digestive tract and already popping out cleaner than they would have been before. So, this has so many applications. I use it, if my dog got into something nasty and, like ate a dead bird, I'm going to let him drink a little bit of this lactic acid bacteria serum. If I'm having a stomach ache, I take little sips of it. Obviously, it's not something you want to like drink a lot of. It is very acidic. And so you do treat it as kind of I guess you would call it a tonic, just a little bit, a
Mhm.
lot of times. And then I use it even in my clothes. Sometimes, you wash your clothes and actually you leave them there. I've noticed that if you put lab in the washer and it, it washes, you can actually leave those clothes longer there without it smelling.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay, you
yeah,
just solved a problem for my wife. Because every once in a while, you get busy and you forget and you go back and then, you get that musty smelling. Oh man, I got to rewash these clothes. That is,
exactly.
I've never actually heard of that one. I know I had looked at them using it as a for cleaning and stuff like that, and the odors, but I never thought about it in the laundry. That's a gold nugget, my friend. That is pure gold.
Yeah, I mean, it's very useful. And I think it also, to a certain extent, might be coating your clothes with probiotics as well. Again, you don't want to use a
Yeah.
ton of it, but, Drake from Hawaii, also a Korean natural farming guy, he uses it all over the place. And he talks about his property almost as being like just biosecure. It's just so alive that if anyone comes in with like viruses or sickness or illness,
Mhm.
like just the biology surrounding will also help buffer that. Now, I'm not saying it's like everyone's cured when they walk on that property, but we do need to start imagining and seeing all the biology that's constantly around us that we just didn't know was there until now. So, yeah,
Well,
acknowledging the little guys.
as I understand it, the lactic acid bacteria, and that's what they put in like Activia yogurt for our stomach health. But it is the most relatable to the human species of all the biologies that are out there. So in that case, it's really, you could, jump in a bathtub with it and it's not going to harm you at all. But Lily has wants to reiterate on how do you use it in the laundry, because she missed that.
Yeah, so I put it in before washing. And now the laundry does get at a certain temperature, but if you look at lactobacillus behavior, you'll see that sometimes it's actually activated with the heat. And so I just put, a couple of ounces, maybe 1 ounce in a load. And once it's done, it's kind of like embedded in everything, and there it sits, and it helps your clothes not smell. Yeah. And I use it all over too. I mean, the first thing I tested on it was my dog decided to relieve herself on the carpet in two places. And, for science, once cleaning it, I only sprayed one spot of that with the labs. And I went back and I smelled the two patches, and the first patch that I sprayed had a distinct, just like, just general odor of lactobacillus and nothing else. And slowly it just dissipated. And I think it's super useful just to have around the house. You could probably soak your garbage disposal in it. You could probably put it down your
Mhm.
toilet, and it would help potentially unclog problems, right? So it could be. I just can't wait to see where people apply it, and it's such a easy thing to make that we could all just have it on our counter for really cheap.
Well, I know that Drake from Hawaii, and that's it's, oh, I can't remember the actual site on YouTube.
Pure KNF.
Yes, yeah. He has a lot of valuable information, and I've learned an amazing amount from watching his videos. That and Chris Trump, but I'm wondering, like up here, we have a problem with dogs getting sprayed by skunks. I'm wondering if it would work for that. Have you ever heard of anybody potentially using it for that?
Okay, just to repeat the last part real quick. It cut out just for a second.
Oh, for skunks, and when your dog gets sprayed by a skunk, have you
Right.
ever heard anyone that has used it for that kind of an application?
That sounds perfect. You know, I can't attest to it yet being better than tomatoes, but if you think about it too, like I think part of what helps in the tomatoes, I'm assuming, is the acidity, and lactic acid bacteria is also creating that similar acidity. I can see it helping. I don't know. Skunks are pretty gnarly, and there might be just a component that just needs that tomato sauce. But it's definitely worth trying, or at least throwing it in the mix. And what the heck, it's so cheap to make. You could be experimenting with it all the time. It's not like you got to be super calculated with it. It's literally a byproduct.
Yeah. Well, I know I have friends that have cattle farms and horses, and you get that particular odor, and it's probably going to help with that. Now, Lily is still having a little bit of an issue. She wants to a little bit closer direction. How much are you spraying the clothes? Are you like putting an ounce in with the wash, or how are you
Yeah,
actually
there's
specifically
no
using it?
official protocol, but I would say an ounce to 2 ounces in the wash before sending it off, and then you
Okay.
just let it do its thing. You don't want to put too much in it either. I can see it. It's just so effective. You don't really need to use a lot. It goes such a long
Mhm.
way. Um, and I encourage people to experiment with it. So literally do whatever you want with it, and get back to me. This is something that's worked for me. And I live in a pretty dry climate too, so I don't know if my laundry just generally smells less. But I have compared it to laundry that I haven't sprayed with it, and that tends to smell all the same. So I don't know. It's something that everyone should experiment with. I'm just kind of playing around with it. KNF gives you a lot of these inputs, and you can put them all over the place. Doesn't mean they'll work, but it's worth trying. It's fun. Yeah,
Well, yeah, and experimentation is the spice of life. Like it's
yeah.
like trying different foods, trying different mushrooms.
Mm.
And I know for a fact because I actually sent the link for the app to John Burfello last night because I had given him a bunch of different KNF inputs. That Drake has an app for your phone on when you're using it in your garden, on the percentage of so many mils to so many gallons, etc. So if you want to get involved in the Korean natural farming, that's an app that you really should look at to promote Mr. Drake because he's an amazing man. Um, I know that you had mentioned in the past that you were going to be putting on some courses in your local area to help people. Are you arranging more courses for that as well?
Yeah, so I had kind of like the first big official intro to KNF course very recently. I did it just last week.
Right
Went
on.
very well. I think I have a lot of stuff to improve on, both effectiveness in communicating certain things and filling in some gaps. A lot of the questions that came up later. But more are in the works. I'm going to see if I can work with. There's some like wellness spots and maybe even restaurants that would want to host these kind of things. So it's really it's in the works. There's one place that I have in mind that I'm going to talk to soon, and yeah, I just kind of cyclically throughout the year teach these free Korean natural farming classes. I can foresee a future where people want to know a lot more, and I feel comfortable with my level of knowledge, where I will have paid classes, but I'm just not there yet. I'd
Mhm.
much rather just kind of get this rolling, and so the community can help each other. Again, I can't do this
Yeah.
all on my own, but the inputs are a ton, and at the end of the day, I think it's like all the other facets of life. Like if we were to work together and share some of the burden. Everyone does what they do best. I think we can find just be so much more efficient.
Well, that's where I say it's all about caring, sharing, and community. And it's building that community to help each other. And like you were saying, if somebody does have a dog that gets into a little bit of an altercation with a skunk, and you do try it, and it works, let us know, let Julian know. And I'll put his Instagram up again. You can, if you're experimenting and you find something that you didn't hear about before that you're using and it's working really well, let Julian know, and let me know, and other people in the communities, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, or wherever, that are doing this, that you've had this experience, because that's going to help us all move forward. And definitely the natural farming techniques, when we can get away from the herbicides, pesticides, the really, really expensive fertilizers, like your nitrogens, I think that's going to benefit everybody as a species on this planet. I wanted, and I forgot to mention it earlier. Are you going to be at the Southwest Fungi Fest?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean that's kind of this event that David and I are organizing, and it's going to be hopefully one of the biggest community gatherings that I've been able to facilitate so far. It's going to be in northern New Mexico at the end of July, 27th of July to 30th, and it's awesome. I've gotten to talk with a lot of cool people that are going to potentially speak. Some teachers we already have on the books, and we're just waiting to announce them as the days go on. And yeah, so for anyone interested, what's happening, do look at Southwest Funga Fest on Instagram. That's SW Funga Fest, and we hope to just even share a lot of educational content there. Local mushrooms, what they look like, perhaps different anecdotes from different foragers in the region, all bringing their stories together to inform people. So yeah, that's going to be really exciting. David has been contacting a lot of cool people, and yeah, again, we've only announced Matt Powers, which by the way, he's going to be there.
Oh,
And
sweet.
yeah. He's going to be there. We're going to do a lot of soil science stuff. He's going to bring his DNA sequencing machine, and we're also going to have a lot of stuff just ready to dig in deeper. Yeah, like
Yeah.
see what's in our soil. Like see why is that patch of grass looking so good? Why is this mushroom? What component of this mushroom is healthy? There's so many questions that you start having when you're in the natural world, and this is going to be a festival that's going to hopefully answer a lot of those questions, or at least give people the ability to go out and find those on their own.
Well, and that's brilliant. And I know, David, we were talking about he was setting up a community lab for people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure you guys are going to be using that facility. And I'm hoping that more people can do things like that, and more people will share and donate. Whether it's a little bit of money, or if they have some slides or an old microscope that they're not using because they've upgraded,
Yep.
share that with your local community, my friends, because that's how we're going to move ahead as a society. And I think you guys are absolutely amazing for hosting this. And I would like to put it on my website. It's all about the biology. So if you can send me that information, I'm
Absolutely.
gonna want to put it on there to help you guys get the information out more. Um,
Awesome. Thank you.
so speaking of social media, one of the questions, or things you had thought we might want to talk about, was the positives and negatives of social media right now. Now, I'm not sure what you mean by that. So give me a little bit more of a sense of why you wanted to talk about social media.
Right. So, just first of all, I'm in a context where I am a social media manager for this mushroom farm, and I've been managing my own Instagram account for a while, and I've been forced to kind of have some perspective on it and both be exposed to the negative and the positive, which is a lot of both. And first of all, let's just talk about how, we're all kind of being forced to be on certain platforms because it's one of the only ways that you can truly reach out to everyone, right? So
Hmm.
Instagram, the majority of people are there. So whether it's for business or for personal reasons, like kind of have to be there. So hopefully
Hmm.
in the long term, creating communities outside of this social media world is the goal. But while we're
Hmm.
being forced to kind of be in it, I really want to encourage everyone to leverage it at their maximum potential. Because out of personal experience, I've made a ton of good friends through social media. I've been able to
Hmm.
zero in on people that have almost identical interests and get into really in-depth
Yeah.
conversations. And yeah, I've made connections that have led me to new ideas and discoveries. And really, it's kind of wild. It's hard to really acknowledge how personable or close you can get to someone just through a screen. But you can just ask some people a question out of nowhere and you might get a really interesting answer. I love when I do something, I made like my Jadam wedding agent soap. I went out on Instagram and looked at that hashtag and saw everyone else that did it. And I kind of like went through, and if I had a question, maybe regarding what they were doing in their process, I would like comment that. And I would kind of start these discussions to help embellish what I know. Not the
Right.
ultimate source of information, but definitely a really cool place. You can, if you think about it, it's like opening a door into, a plaza with millions of people from one second to the next. And so if you don't leverage that, you're kind of missing out. There
Hmm.
are ways to be known on social media that, might connect you to the right people, might give you that opportunity. Um, so yeah, I think I don't want to encourage anyone to like, spend a ton of time on social media, be strategic, realize what your goals are. You know, a lot of people get super caught up and try to post a ton of content, and then they burn out and they can't post as much. And so, and there are all these hidden algorithms that mess with you, and they're like, oh, this guy isn't posting as much. I guess I won't, send this picture off to as many people. And so then your reach starts dropping. And, it can be a really confusing space to be in. So just keep it simple. I think keeping it informative, whether you're selling something or not, I think you should be educating the people, right? I mean, it's I think our responsibility to intercept all the negativity on Instagram and Facebook and all these places, and
Hmm.
provide people with answers to things or some cool rabbit holes to get their mind going instead of just passively taking in random videos that are being generated almost as you scroll to fit exactly what will send off your dopamine. So it's kind of like it's a very addictive thing, and you just break free by pursuing that education. Very simply put. So yeah, I think hopefully that gives a little bit of an image of what I say when there are negatives and positives to social media.
And I definitely have to agree because you can find groups that are interested in the same things you're interested in. And a lot of those groups have the experts already there that you can tap into and gain the knowledge you're looking for. And, there's the negative side where there's the trolls. And the wife actually ran across a really interesting video on from oh, geez. Inspired on YouTube. And he
Okay.
was actually talking that like 64% um, of the people, supposed people on YouTube, are actually bots, and the algorithm, and it's a lot of people are paying for to boost up their numbers. And like personally, I don't think that's right, but it does happen. But I know myself that and I'm sure you've experienced this, where you've gotten trolls, you've got negative comments. um for myself, and I'm sure you've probably come to this realization too, what they say doesn't really matter as long as you're honest and wholesome within yourself, and you're giving the right information. That you just ignore them and just carry on with doing what is good for your community. Um, could you touch on that and maybe a little bit of how you deal with that kind of an experience? Because I know a lot of people do have problems like that.
Yeah. So I haven't gotten a ton of haters yet, but it has happened where people leave very pointed comments or very passive aggressive comments. And it's hard to catch tone over the internet and over text and everything. And I am a guy that takes on emotions, but I did learn to kind of like dismiss it pretty early on. And it's also funny because honestly, when people give you that feedback, it's almost giving you a boost for the algorithm. And so it's a really weird thing that happens. But you have your you have your picture. Some of the most popular videos I've posted have been the ones with the fights in the comments because so many people are like going at each other and it's creating this momentum. And I think that points to the algorithm and how messed up it is in the sense that it promotes controversy, right? Because posts where people fight a lot create a lot of movement and there's just a lot of action, that post gets elevated. And so, they're all these weird strategies that people use to like get popular videos. They'll start the video out with something really confusing, like, dropping like 12 eggs on a cow's face. I don't know. And so you're like, what's going on in here? And you open it up and you're like, oh, it's just like clickbait,
Clickbait.
Yeah. So, when these things happen, I just kind of try to take them, maybe learn from them if it was like some kind of intelligent comment, but if not, just kind of like brush it off, say I'm trying to do the best I can anyway.
Yeah.
I don't want to indulge some people. We had someone, for example, we had used cardboard in our remediation bed, and this lady went off about how cardboard has tons of toxic chemicals and tons of glues inside, and it's like very irresponsible of us. And we were like, well, that's the point of the bed. We're actually remediating it. We're actually starting from a dead place and seeing throughout the years what's going to happen to it. We're not going to eat out of it right away. All these different things. And people, it can just be really angry off the bat. And of course, yeah, there's these trolls that just scour the internet, just saying negative things. And yeah, it's just good to let it go, move onwards, realize, hey, maybe it's even boosting your reach. So, you gotta turn it around sometimes.
Well, and that's it. A lot of it can be based on perspective and how you view it. Like I look at trolls now and I just start laughing. It's like, because in reality, yeah, they are actually helping you because they're elevating your numbers of responses,
Yeah.
etc. So, like I know a lot of different people that just laugh like that and go, yeah, bring it on, baby, because you're just helping me get my message, true message out.
Yeah.
So like I think the trolls, if any trolls are watching this, they're going, oh man, and here I was
Yeah.
having so much fun. You just ruined my fun.
Yeah. Or keep doing it, and boost our numbers. I don't know.
Yeah, come on, baby, come on, more.
Yeah, let me have it. I want to hear it all. I don't care. Just
Well, let's jump into, because you had made an interesting point on seeds, and I know a lot of us as a gardener, long-term gardener, that you start your plants, especially in Canada, in a greenhouse, and then in the spring you're bringing them out, hardening them off for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, depending on your weather fluctuations. And you were talking about just straight sowing and some of the real benefits that can have for people. How do you feel, or go into that a little bit more in depth if you could, please?
Yeah. So, there are always going to be plants that you need to start indoors and bring outside. And like a lot of the annuals that we love, it's always good to get the peppers going and the tomatoes going a little early just so they get that running start. Um, but there's something really magical that happens when you just get a bunch of seeds and you throw them on the ground and you see which ones survive. It's
Hmm.
forcing evolution to some extent, and you're letting the strongest survive. And I've had only a couple of generations of this one corn, um, but you throw a ton of corn out, you may not get a really good flush the first year. You might only have 2 or 3 things that come up. What happens is that those seeds are now adapted. They have this
They're the
embedded,
strong ones.
yeah, they're the strong ones. And you'll notice that when you plant those seeds, you'll get a much higher germination rate the second year and so forth. And so this is also a way to make things easy. Honestly, like I've babied a ton of plants in my life and then ended up losing fractions of them. And, I there's this benefit to just throwing the seeds out there, and it takes you literally 30 seconds, and then you watch it all come up. Again, this is not good for every seed. You're going to want to, maybe
Yeah.
protect some of the more delicate plants. But if you start doing this, gardening becomes a lot more, nature taking its course, and not less you forcing yourself onto nature. And I think it's easier that way. You start
Hmm.
realizing, oh, this plant does really well. I think the main example for me is sorghum, this West African plant that's been slowly moving around Africa and the world, and now just turns out it's a really drought tolerant plant while producing a ton of biomass. So I
Hmm.
put these seeds out last year, and I never watered certain plants, and we're in the high desert, and without any water, the certain patch just kept going, just did the same thing that you'd expect it to do with water. And that's crucial in a place where water is super expensive, water isn't around all the time. And now I've zeroed in on this plant that just works for me. And really, I just throw it out and it starts coming up on itself. You literally step on it and it'll put up another shoot and keep growing. You can pinch off the grain on top and it'll put up another grain. It has more grain heads than corn has ears. It is so sugar dense. You can make molasses from it. I mean, it's an incredible plant, and I've learned to just work with plants that are just a little easier in my environment. And I did that by just doing a little research. You ask people, you realize, oh, there's this whole bunch of wildflowers that is, the chocolate flower here, one of my favorite flowers on earth, smells like chocolate. Literally grows straight out of the clay and sand, like needs no water. Why aren't more
Okay,
people
now
growing
hold on, hold on. Okay, now my wife is a chocoholic, brother. Okay,
it?
now I'm in trouble. I'm gonna have to see if those are gonna grow in Canada, just so she can go out and smell the
They might.
plant.
They might. And I'll tell you, it's like, pure chocolate. And it's only in the morning and then it fades off and it's not there during the day. But yeah, I've seen it. It comes up when it's really, really cold here. So I wouldn't be surprised if it can handle up there. The elevation here makes our winters really harsh. So
Mhm.
it might have some of that embedded knowledge to take care of that winter season. So yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things is you're also training the plant. If you, and like you said, you didn't get very much of the corn the first year, but the ones that are the strong ones survived, and you're taking those seeds, putting them back into your same environment, and you're really adapting those that particular corn to your environment. And I know we do that quite a bit with cannabis. When we're doing outdoor growing, we want to find the plants that are suited more for our environment, whether that's a dry or a wet, a windy, or etc. So I know you are a very much a cannabis grower yourself. Are you doing that with the cannabis plants as well?
Yes.
And I know you had mentioned autoflowers, and we'll get into that next. But yeah, are you doing that specifically for your area, in where you're at, for higher up on the mountain?
Totally. Yes. Great question. I can't believe I didn't bring that one up myself as well, because the cannabis this year, I was kind of forced to start making seeds with it. I put it in the ground and I realized that, oh my gosh, there's maybe a little too much of a pesticide load in here. I don't really know what it is, but I'm not going to risk consuming this because,
Hmm.
your medicine should be clean. And so what I ended up doing is I found a really strong male and I pollinated all these plants. Now, they didn't get adapted in the beginning of the season to this climate, but I let them go through into the end of November, whereas usually you're
Hmm.
harvesting your plants around October. This means that the plant went through maybe 10 or more freezes, even hard freezes, and survived by the time I picked the seeds. So the plants that I have here have been adapted, and there are definitely some that didn't do as well. But other ones
Hmm.
were alive and thriving after it had frozen, quite a bit. And I actually noticed in the garden where some of those plants were, I have some sprouts coming up right now, and it's been consistently freezing in the past month from those very plants. So not only is there an embedded knowledge, but I think something that helps kind of explain it a little better is that there are also bacteria and endophytes that partner with the plant, and then when it goes into seed form, they actually follow it into seed form and cyst up and will reemerge once the seed comes through. So yeah, that's kind of what the knowledge of the seed is. It's the bacteria and biology that it acquires throughout the season. And the bacteria is what it's helping the cold resistance, for example. So
Hmm.
I have these adapted seeds now. I'm going to just chuck them back into the garden, get those seeds started that way as well, and hopefully create a land race, right? So land races are not necessarily wild plants that grow in these, desolate places. They're actually plants that have interacted with humankind and have been grown in a specific agricultural way. And so
Hmm.
I can create that land race here by adapting it to this climate and making it so that if this plant, for example, all of a sudden starts off in the wild, it can drop seeds and those seeds will keep going. Whereas when you breed indoors, for example, you breed for a plant that's really used to those conditions. It's used to it's babied at the end of the day. It's used to really standard temperatures and all these things. And you might want a plant that was bred indoors if you're growing indoors. You don't want a
Yeah.
plant that was bred outside. And so as long as you know that, you can make some more informed decisions as the type of genetics you decide to choose because things just don't work in every environment. And if we start seeing where the seeds come from and even getting to know the breeders a little bit better, I might love some of these breeders out there, but they're in a different climate than me. I have no business getting some of those genetics if I don't want to expect to need to adapt them. So I got some genetics that were from California, from kind of a similar area, definitely not as cold in the winter. So I was wondering maybe they won't handle the winter as well. And some did, some didn't. And now I kind of know which to select for.
Well, and that works with both cannabis and every other plant on our planet. It's either going to grow in your environment or it's not, and some are going to be healthier. And the ones that are even halfway healthy, if you can collect those seeds after a couple of seasons, it's going to really adapt. It's like our bodies. Like I live in the northern climate, but I spent time in British Columbia where it was like 20 degrees in the summer, hotter than where I'm used to, and my blood thinned and my body adapted. And the plants can do that as well. It's amazing. Like, I don't know what Mother Nature had in store for us when she started, but man, are we ever adaptable as on this planet itself? Because everything seems to be able to make changes. Like, whoever thought that they were finding biology in the vent of an underground or an undersea volcanic flue, that's the water is boiling and there's all this life. Nobody ever figured there was going to be life there, and it's abundant.
Yeah, no, totally true. And so beautiful, what we can do. I think we haven't even seen the potential of what these plants can do because we're already operating in, right, there are toxins in our air and in our soil, and even agricultural fields aren't really there at producing at 100% what the plant can achieve. And the plant can achieve so much. It really can photosynthesize at levels like we haven't even seen before. And so it's just
Hmm.
about working with the plant, seeing how we can help it be more in tune with the soil. And we'll see evolution before our eyes, right? Especially through
Yeah.
selection. We can select for plants that have certain smells, certain, resistances, and we'll see that within our lifetime. It's kind of wild how we can direct it. And
Yeah.
to bring it in the food realm, that means that people could start breeding tomatoes and zucchini and all this different stuff. And we could have thousands of different types in the next 10, 15 years. It could be a seed renaissance, right? If people with intention would go through and breed seeds and select for tasty ones for different flavors, we could have so many different flavors to delight our palate with that we can't even fathom right now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that I know lots of people that have bred tomatoes and even roses. Let's get into something other than food and cannabis, but your flowers, your trees, you know, how many people have done rose cuttings and created all this stuff. It's absolutely amazing what Mother Nature can do if you work with her instead of working against her. But like, we're almost out of time, Julian, for today, and we're obviously I'm going to have you back on for more of these discussions because we haven't even touched the surface of your
Right.
understanding. But last week, or well, 2.5 weeks ago, I asked you a question at the end, and so you've had a bit of a time to have it sink in. But what would you have to say to the youth of today about the passion it takes to find their path in life? Now, you've had some time to think. Is it the same kind of answer, or have you explored it a little bit deeper?
Man, so I really want to stick to the guns of the giving the kids seeds to physically see something grow. But I'll also, yeah, I mean, I can't say I've dwelled on it enough, but because it's such a deep question with so many repercussions, and right, the kids are the future, and how do you drive their passions? I think you just got to have them experience a lot of different things they could be passionate about, and kind of help them align with that. I think my parents probably noticed that I liked plants, and they encouraged that and pointed me in that direction, and signed me up for things that helped me to learn more. And so yeah, helping kids see a bigger palette of options. You grow up as a kid and you're like, I'll be a firefighter or Batman. Like there are these options that are like there, and they're like the classic ones, but we need to start showing kids that are all these other options and ways to yeah, make a living, regenerating the earth, while also finding something that's really drives your passion, right? So, and I think there's so much room for this. There's a ton of room for the future, for whether it's compost consultant, soil consultant, garden consultant, or even just helping manage people and what type of food they intake. There's so many different ways that we can interact
Yeah.
and give kids, just kind of the
Well,
means to do what they want.
I want to bring up a silly Lily statement because I think it really ties this in. Children are the seeds of our future, so giving them seeds there where they can watch it grow is a great idea, and I have to agree. And giving them the different options and showing them as much as you possibly can of the different options and availabilities in this life is absolutely amazing. And I think it's going to create a generation that's going to be more in tune with nature and life and the benefits that we all have and what we can do. But Julian, as I said, we're going to have you back on more and more. But thank you so much for coming again today. It's been a phenomenal conversation. I just can't wait for our next one because there's so much more that we can explore together. And I really appreciate it. And before we go, the one thing we didn't touch on, and guys, Julian's going to be at Spanavis in Spain this year. So if anybody's going to Spain, is going to Spanavis, look Julian up, because this is a young man that you should really grab onto and explore this man's mind, because there's a lot there to explore. We're going to be exploring it on the show, but to meet you in person and give you a big hug, man, in the future, that's going to happen. And I'm going to give you a big
Cool.
Canadian bear hug, and I'm going to try not to hurt you if you promise not to hurt me.
Promise. Looking
Okay.
forward to it.
Okay, brother. Well, we're going to end the broadcast, everybody. We've got one more show today with the barn, Dennis from Summit. Oh, geez. Oh, man, I'm drawing a blank. I better get it right because I'll be in real trouble if I don't. And I didn't write it down. Nature Summit. There it is. I should have put my glasses on. That probably would have helped. But yeah, we've got Dennis coming on in a few hours. So check that out. And don't forget that on Friday, Leighton Morrison and Dr. Av Singh, we have a new show with them that's going to be every Friday called The Soil Matters. And we're going to explore KNF and a lot of other things that we can do with our soils to improve them, to bring the biology back into the system. Because if we don't, well, we're going to be in trouble very soon here. So Julian, you're doing that every day, and blessings, brother, because you're helping our species to make it through this a troubling time. But everybody, the chat, thank you everybody for coming, and share everything. If you found this beneficial, share it with your social networks so more people can come on and find this information. We love you all. And as Pat Scallion, and I don't know if this is your a father, a brother, you know, he's saying, loved hearing from you, Julian. And so did we. Thank you very much. And we'll have you on again very soon.
Can't wait.
Goodbye, everybody.